In this video, we'll describe how you can make requests against the Salesforce REST API from your Alpha Anywhere applications. And we're going to describe how you can make these requests using a special XBasic helper function called Salesforce API Request. So this function can be used in one of two ways. You can either basically use this function to execute queries against Salesforce objects using Soql, which is the Salesforce SQL-like syntax for doing queries against Salesforce data objects, or you can make direct requests against the Salesforce REST API endpoints, and these endpoints are all documented in the Salesforce REST API documentation. But before you can start using the Salesforce API request function in your Alpha Anywhere applications, there are certain prerequisites that you need to consider. First, you need to go into your Salesforce account and set up a new connected application. And once you've done that, you can go back to your Alpha Anywhere project and create a named resource for your Salesforce application. So having done that, we can now go back into Alpha Anywhere and start making requests against the Salesforce API. So now here we are back at Alpha Anywhere, and I'm going to just go to the Tools menu here and open up the Named Providers dialog. And you can see that I have a named provider called, a named resource called Salesforce Local, and the little green icon over here indicates that I've already authenticated against this my Salesforce account, and I've gotten the access tokens necessary to make the API requests. So when I go ahead now and actually make my API requests from within my development environment, Salesforce is not going to present a login screen to me because we already have the access token. So in order to actually test the XBasic function that we want to use, the Salesforce API request function, we're going to go to the web control panel, select the XBasic category, and then go there and say new, and I'll say XBasic function library. So this is going to allow us to type in XBasic code and actually test it directly. So the first thing I'm going to do is execute a query using the Salesforce SQL syntax. So let me pause now while I copy in some data from the clipboard. So we're back here now, and I've copied in a query now from the clipboard. So you can see the query that we've got over here, which is using the Salesforce SQL syntax, is going to make a query using a select statement against the Salesforce account object, and I'm going to basically display the name, account number, and owner ID columns. You can see here that basically the query has been URL encoded, but if you don't URL encode it, it's okay, because the Salesforce API function will actually go ahead and URL encode it for you automatically. So it's not necessary to actually URL encode it as I've shown over here. So you can see here that the Salesforce API request function takes as its first argument the name of the named resource that you want to use to authenticate your API request. So in this case, we're specifying we want to use a named resource called Salesforce Local, and our endpoint in this case is a query. So this is indicating here that we're basically making a request using the SQL syntax as opposed to a generic request against a Salesforce NPI. And then our actual query itself is defined over here. So let's go ahead now and click the execute button to run this, and we'll see that we get back our result from Salesforce. So basically we got 17 records back, and here are the fields that we requested: name, account, and owner ID, and site. So let's pause now and continue in the next video.